Hi everyone, welcome to another Rants with Carly. Cannot wait. Oh, I know. Every time I say I'm excited about this one, but this is the rant I actually really, really wanted to have. It's about, in fact, I'm not going to say what it's about. I'm going to bring on today's guest and we're going to chat about this. And I'll let Laura, that's a clue to who I've got coming on. Laura introduce what we are ranting about, something we share as a passion to dislike. It's actually a certain person, which sounds quite negative, but as usual, we will turn this around and bring a positive back in. So I'm chatting to Laura Perkes. And Laura is all things PR, and she's really passionate about helping brands and entrepreneurs to get their story out there to the world and to shine. Let's bring her on and let's get today's rant underway. I cannot wait. Are you ready? Here we are. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm brilliant. I was just saying then, I've just did a really quick introduction, the quickest introduction ever, I think. And I was just saying, I'm really excited about this one. I can't contain my excitement. And I'm loving your colours, by the way. Loving your background.
Thank you. It's actually my living room.
Is it?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. Because we've got an open plan downstairs, and I like the kind of the space and the windows at either end.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, and
yes,
it's
it's just in a corner of my house.
love it. And that's the first thing I'm at under my stairs, pretty much. That's fine. But you're very sorry, we're going to go off on one here. Maybe this is a separate episode, but I love that maximalist. You call it maximalist, don't you? Decor
Yeah,
design. That
yeah,
is my style.
yeah.
Anyway, Laura, I've just given a really quick introduction to yourself. I've just said the all things PR. I'm bringing, I just said about shining bright, and you're there with the bright colours. And I haven't introduced this rant yet because I wanted to hand that across to you. Then we'll quickly chat about how this rant came about, what it is, and as always, we will rant, release, and then we will bring in like the antidote. So I'm not sure this what it is to a person, but the antidote to that rant. So bring that positive spin. Let's start with what it is, Laura. Over to you.
Perfect. So the podcast today is going to be slightly controversial, perhaps a little bit disruptive, but all about speaking our truth. And from what I remember, you'd posted something on Facebook. I think about maybe Steven Bartlett, and I was just like, oh God, I'm so over it. I'm so over the hype. I really don't think he's anything that special. And you said, do you want to come on the podcast and have a bit of a rant about it? And I thought, sure, why not? So here we are talking about who I believe is probably one of the most overhyped people on the planet. And I guess that's what we're going to delve into today.
Yes, we are. Oh, I get excited. I sing when I'm excited. And yeah, this was it. I think I'd actually commented on somebody else's post. I'm trying to think back as well, because this is yeah, anybody watching this is how connections are formed. I'm all about sharing your voice, and that's where this rants came about. It seems quite negative, but actually to share this passionate view we have about people, it'll end up being a positive spin. But that's what it was. I saw somebody's post. Everybody's completely team Bartlett a lot of the time. So this one refreshing post, somebody said, "Oh, actually, I'm not a fan," and it seemed like the perfect outlet to go. Me neither. And let's talk about this. You joined in, and I was like, right, let's do this. So yeah, the other person, I maybe should rant about at some point because I'm with you on him being the most over. I can't. What did you use? Word did you
Overhyped.
use? Overhyped. Yeah, overhyped. Over marketed. I also put Joe Wicks in there, so I might have a separate rant about that at some point. But yeah, let's chat about it. Let's start with you, Laura, because you are my guest. Let's chat about why you think he's overhyped to start with.
So I I think it's actually more in recent years because I've always been like a really big fan of The Diary of a CEO because I loved the type of guests that he was getting on and I loved the conversations he was having. But actually, in recent years, and maybe it's just over in the last like 6 or 8 months, I really felt a switch in that podcast. And the one thing that always makes me laugh is he talked about his background and his upbringing. And I went to university in Plymouth. Now, it's fair to say that as a white woman, I would not have understood maybe the prejudices and racism that he received. I don't remember Plymouth being like the gangland streets of New York. So part of me is a little bit like, you weren't, Plymouth's not that rough. Of all the counties that you could live in, Plymouth isn't particularly rough. So I think him saying, oh, I had a really terrible childhood, for me, it feels like he's making it sound that he had this really kind of disadvantaged upbringing. And for me, it just feels disingenuous. And when I start to smell the bullshit, it starts to turn me off. Then what I noticed was a lot of his podcast sponsors are actually companies that he's invested in. And again, I'm thinking, again, that doesn't feel genuine. That feels like you've got some kind of agreement behind the scenes of you'll invest in their business and then you'll use your own platform to promote them. In a way, it's absolute marketing genius, but I just think for some people who are listening won't understand the kind of the nature of that relationship. And, for many of us business owners and entrepreneurs, we would absolutely love to have Airbnb, Zoe, Whoop, advertising, paying us to advertise on our podcast. And I'm just a bit like, but that's not actually real life. And then, of course, the incredible marketing team he has behind him that is making the podcast what it is. And, I scroll a lot on TikTok. I use it for a lot of my entertainment. And they have done such an incredible job of how they promote it on TikTok. But again, from a marketing perspective, we're only seeing little snippets. And what they're doing is phenomenal. They are able to test stuff in real time. They're able to collect data. They're able to see what their audience is responding to. And again, I think that sometimes makes smaller business owners and entrepreneurs think, I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm never going to get to his level of success. So it's almost like all the incredible things that he does, I just feel like it comes with this weight of, I'm better than everyone else. And it's not the whole truth. And for me, I've worked in PR for 20 years. For me, it's all about the truth. And as soon as I can start getting a whiff of BS, I'm like, oh no, I've now kind of lost some credibility that I had for you. For me, that's ruining your reputation, because you could be using your platform to educate people on really what's going on behind the scenes, not just the bits that you're picking and choosing.
Oh, I love it. I don't even know where to start with that. I'm just nodding along saying, yes, I agree with all of this. I'm going right back to Plymouth. I'm thinking Plymouth and the tourist board must be just hanging their head in shame to start with. You're doing them dirty there.
Yeah.
But I wonder, as I was listening to you then, because I suppose myself and you are in a similar sort of profession where PR, he's got the marketing team there, I'm in brand strategy. They all link very closely together. And I wonder, because I do this sometimes, I'm quite intuitive. I will see BS way before other people. And this is why I think I was so keen to get you on, because you saw it. And I was like, yes, somebody else sees it. Let's chat about this. I wonder if because we're from this sort of field, we do know the tactics, we do sniff out that BS, whereas the rest of the world is so many steps behind going, oh, Lord Steven Bartlett, bow down. They don't see the working cogs behind it. Do you think that's partly to do with it, that we just see it?
Yes. Yeah, I do. And this is something, excuse my dogs kicking off in the back.
Oh, I can't hear them, don't worry.
Oh, can you not? Oh, that's fine.
No.
I think a lot of it is the industry that I've been in, and I see a lot and I hear a lot, but as well that intuition. And that's kind of, it's almost like a gift that you don't know you've got, because you just assume that everybody is the same as you. But it can also be a blessing and a curse. Because sometimes I'm like, oh my God, everyone's literally going gaga over Steven Bartlett. Why am I the opposite? Is it because, and I've got this thing about being hero worshipped, and it's not a place that I ever want to be. Therefore, I don't understand how people are so fascinated by other people and will queue up and they want to do a meet and greet with him and they'll throw money at going to his events. And I'm like, but he's just like some, I don't even know how old he is now. Let's just say late 20s, early 30s dude who's doing what the rest of us are doing. he's nothing special. He's not doing anything different to the rest of us. He's probably just had luck on his side. He's banged on enough doors to get to where he is, which I think is incredible. And I think as well, maybe being on Dragon's Den as well has made him more mainstream. And that's where so many more people are like, oh my God, he's so amazing. Maybe it's a generational thing. You know, I am now 41, and maybe I just don't buy into that form of marketing. I'm not his target audience. But I guess maybe for a lot of younger millennials or Gen Z entrepreneurs, he is an absolute idol. He gives them hope. For me, I'm like, yeah, he's done a great job. It's not the be all and end all.
Yeah, there's something about that. I think I'm way past that. I'm in my 40s and I just look and think, oh, I don't know. Because he has been through that hardship. I'm not denying that. He's got a story, he's got a background. He has done exceptionally well. That story is brought to the forefront. I wonder if, and going back to what something you said at the beginning about how he's almost untouchable, that we can't get to him. He's become that level of success, and that's the danger. When you get, the more successful you get, the more out of touch you get with the very people that you want to inspire at the bottom. Somehow he's still got that following, because it is almost like a celebrity status for people like ourselves that see the BS and think, well, yeah, done well, but I don't relate to him. I just wonder if there's something that his story, and maybe this is where even turning Plymouth into ganglands has come from, that he has had to almost amplify it, and he's had to make it. And there'll be somebody in there, somebody whispering in his ear, it's a brand story. You have to make this from rags to riches, from from that what's the word, disadvantage to where you are now and the struggles you've overcome. I think it's something that I think it's been lost along the way, and it's been blown up into this superstar that, like you say, is a normal person. How do we break? How, I don't know. For me, I just can't get past that, and I wonder if his bubble will burst at some point as those younger generation get a little bit older. That I don't know. I can't see how he'll keep that going, because if it is a certain person, they're going to grow and get wiser to these tactics. Or will they not? Is that the thing? Is that just him?
It's interesting, and it's funny that you've brought up the kind of the rags to riches story, because I see this a lot in my line of work. And for the last 4 years, I've very much been focused on working with coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs to teach them how to get their own PR. And, this came about because of the global pandemic, and, bigger brand clients were like, we're having to shut up shop, so there's no point investing in PR. Totally get it. So I kind of pivoted, and now I've been focusing on coaches and consultants. And the one recurring theme that comes up time and time again is if they don't believe they have a story, it keeps them stuck. Now, I'm not very story-led in the sense of you have to have a rags to riches story. It has to be, I've gone from 50K in debt to 5 million in 5 years. Yes, that has its place, but that doesn't define you. And I'm very much about you. It's your expertise that I really want to hone in on. So when he starts bringing in his background, I almost feel like it's irrelevant to the conversation. Or he brings it out depending on what type of guest he has. And if the guest has had a rough upbringing or a bad background, that's when he tends to bring it in. So I think that's his way of like being relatable to the guest. But it doesn't come across as authentic, and it feels a little bit like there's almost this belief now, and I see it a lot more in the online space than I do anywhere else, is if you shout loud enough, people will listen and believe you.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if he's kind of reiterating this story for other people to be like, oh my God, how amazing. Look where you've come from where you were. But you don't have to have come from a bad place to make your journey any more amazing. And I've always been very much like, I had a very generic, uneventful middle-class upbringing. So there's nothing in my background really that's going to make people be like, oh my God, you've done so well. So I just leave it out because nobody cares, and some people will relate to that and other people won't. But for me, it's like, that doesn't define who I am today. Is a sum of all the things that have happened to me. But my upbringing doesn't really have any bearing. I mean, obviously it does, because, you know, then there's privilege, and then there's having a mum and a dad who raised me and going to, you know, a good school and all this. So no haters come for me. But it just feels, yeah, like they've kind of created this backstory to make him seem another way, and I don't think he necessarily needed to go down that route, because I think what he has created is amazing on his own scheme. He didn't necessarily need that kind of that backstory to drop in.
Yeah, and maybe he has to keep bringing that back out to keep feeling relatable. But as you say, in a way, if you've had a privileged upbringing, it's you know, it's really difficult in this day and age, because you want to acknowledge that privilege. As you know, as white women,
Yes,
we have got a certain privilege. We do, being female, you know, I won't bring all that into the conversation, but it almost becomes that you become as a bit of a disadvantage because you don't have that story to tell. This is the next thing, isn't it? You know, there's so many facets to this in marketing, but with Steven Bartlett, yeah, I do feel that to me, he's become untouchable, and every now and again he's dropping in this bit of, but look, I'm just a normal guy, really. But look at, as you say, all these companies in my podcast. Look at this. Look at me. Look at that. And I think that to me is the bit I can't get as a brand strategist. I say about your vibe, your values. Those values have to run through. There's a disconnect. I feel that he's not quite as genuine. Going right back to full circle, he's not quite this genuine, authentic, relatable guy that they are trying to keep bringing back into the conversation. I think that's where I feel.
Yeah, no, totally. And, you know, I've got so much respect for what he has achieved, because how many young 20-year-olds who have dropped out of university then go on to achieve what he has done? For me, it's like, that's the hero story. You know, don't worry about where you grew up and what happened to you. It's part of who you are, but actually it's what you've achieved, for me, that really helps you stand out from the crowd. It's that level of honesty and authenticity that people crave. You know, we all want to know, how did you get to where you are? And I have heard interviews where he has been super honest, and he said, you know, I was working at 3-4 o'clock in the morning, I was banging on doors, I was putting myself in place. For me, that's the differentiator. That's the truth that I think a lot of entrepreneurs and coaches need, especially coming into business these days, because otherwise you kind of buy into this dream of, oh my God, I just need to show up on social media and sell my stuff. And it's like, he was banging on doors. You know, he built his company, he sold the company at the right time. And this is where I think luck and judgment come into it a lot, and the stars aligning, because these things only happen maybe like once in a lifetime. And he sold his marketing agency years ago, probably long before the Diary of a CEO. And, you know, as the podcast has grown and he's got more of those amazing household brands investing in advertising, but he understands that because his background is marketing, and he's got a team who understand. And I do think there is some incredible stuff that he's done. I think, again, for me, it's that kind of disconnect of what helped you get to where you are.
Yeah, interesting. He's sort of skipping that bit, and he's gone right back for the jugular of this upbringing to where he is now, and skipped out a huge section. Maybe that's the thing. I mean, before we wrap, this is probably the longest rant ever, and I knew, I was like, this should probably just be a full-on podcast interview rather than just a quick rant. Before we release it, which we will in a moment, and we'll quickly provide some sort of positive for it, but I'm sure everybody watching is loving this. If you're not a Steven Bartlett fan, if you are, yeah, just be kind with us. But actually, no, come and provide a bit of debate. This is what we want. Last thing I'm going to say about it, and something you touched on, was that he has done amazing as a young, in his 20s male. From his background, we'll bring that in to a certain degree. He's worked hard. The real disconnect for me that I've not brought in yet, because I thought, let's chat about everything else before I put my spin in, was that it was years ago. And it was like, well, I say years ago, about 2 years ago. It was post-pandemic, but he referred to the pandemic. And he was saying about, he was quoted on this. I don't know if he later pulled the plug on it. He did get some stick for it, but I wonder if his marketing team probably patched it up, probably. That he was saying there was no excuse for anybody in the pandemic. Doesn't matter who you are, you all had 24 hours in a day. It was that toxic bro marketing BS that he was talking. We all had that time in the day. You could have done this. You could have been successful. Just look at me. That is the part that I unplugged and went, oh, that's where I lost that relatability. Because I was like, okay, I'm a mum of 3 children. I had them at home, homeschooling. How can you possibly say that I had the same time as you to build what you've built? That was it for me. So that relatability yet again. And I think that's where, yeah, I switched off from Steven Bartlett. Did you know about that as well? Did you see him say that? Or was it patched up by then?
No, do you know what? I've got, again, I haven't really watched Dragon's Den for years because, there's so much trash TV on that absorbs my time. I've got a feeling he actually said to one of the female founders in the den that she could have done more during the pandemic. And again, I remember hearing the backlash. And again, this is where me and my PR hat comes in. It is about mopping up the mess in the kind of fastest, most effective way possible. But I think in those moments, everybody reveals who they really are.
Mm.
And like you said right at the top with Joe Wicks, they're revealing their true selves. And I think this is where sometimes personal brands in particular need to be careful, because their words carry weight. And that was a comment that he obviously truly believed in, that came out, maybe not in the right context, maybe not in the right way, but we all say our truth and then have to pay the consequences. So yeah, like you, I think a lot of, especially female founders, would have maybe lost some kind of respect for him, because again, he's coming from a place of privilege. He's male. He's gone through rounds of investment. He's working with these major brands. The guests that he's getting on are incredible. That's not necessarily the same opportunities that women have. And again, we could literally probably do a whole week's worth of content.
Yeah.
Ranting about these different subtopics. And like privilege, I think is so emotive as well, that everyone's going to have their own opinion, and none of us are right and none of us are wrong. It's about what is our truth based on the experiences we've had. So again, I think what he's created is incredible. I think he is a role model for a lot of people. I think for me, and again, it may be an age thing. Maybe I'm ageist. Maybe it's just that I'm like, well, he's younger than me. He's male. He doesn't understand what I've been through. Therefore, I don't relate to him in the same way as I would maybe Deborah Meaden or Karen Brady, who I see as real kind of at the forefront at the moment for supporting or just being role models for other women in business. Like, this is achievable. And we're going to be, honest about how we got there.
Yeah, 100%. And I do think that's probably part of it for me. I'm such a champion of women, and that we do have different, we could talk about I can't say, we could talk about this all week. But yeah, it is, we have different experiences. I think for me, the disappointment was that when you're at that level, you've probably got all these advisors, your personal brand inside out, and that relatability that you're trying to bring across. I think I was just disappointed that he said it, but you're right. True Colours come out. They've mopped it up afterwards. And the people are probably still fangirling over him in a way, because I did see a lot of women that are Team Bartlett. They probably just either have forgotten about that because it has been covered up, or they've never heard it. This is years ago. So it's interesting, isn't it? The power of a personal brand, the power of PR, the power of marketing is mainly positive, but it can hide a lot as well, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I do love about him is he does talk about the power of reputation and silent PR. So sometimes I'm like, can you say this louder? So yeah, I think for most personal brands or household brands, there's a fine line between that kind of relatability and what is wholly fully you, and what some of it is behind a mask. Because I do think sometimes people end up playing a character, and I don't blame them for it, because otherwise, if you're you all the time, there's no escape then from the persona that you've created. But that, one of my biggest points to everyone that I work with is just be careful what you say and who you say it to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm always talking about being in a way, I don't like the word authentic, it's overused, but I do say about being yourself. You'll attract the right people. And maybe that's it. Maybe if we're bringing this full circle back to the whole conversation with Steven Bartlett, for me, he's just not for me. I think I just get frustrated that he's for so many people that don't see the things that are going on behind the scenes. But to me, I mean, we're going to do that part now where we release this rant. I'm going to release it. That's my conclusion. I'd love to know yours in a moment of I'm going to just decide that he is not for me, and that's okay. And I'm going to release it, and we're going to provide that antidote. So for you, what are you releasing about Steven Bartlett and the rant that we've just had?
I am going to, actually, what am I going to release? I'm going to release him not being true to himself 100%. And I'm okay with that because that's the path he's chosen to take.
Love it. Yes. And what about the antidote? This is a strange one because we're saying what is the opposite to a person, not necessarily a notion, but I guess it is. I guess it's, yeah, what would we say? Is it antidote? What can we put a positive spin that people watching saying, yeah, I'm not so keen on him either. I guess who can they follow in the online world? I guess maybe it's women. Maybe we are looking at women in business, a positive role model.
Yeah. Or actually, no, do you know what it is? I think it's actually looking at somebody's values.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy now with social media, marketing, PR, we're bombarded with messages all the time. It's difficult to then decipher what's true and what's maybe a bit of a mask. So I would say choose who you follow wisely based on whether or not your kind of values align.
Yes, love it. And that is so in line with what I tell people. And I think it's back to that word we touched on before, intuition. Follow that intuition and don't be a sheep. You might have Team Bartlett that are banging on about him, how amazing he is, or Team Joe Wicks that, see, I'm from the fitness industry originally and I saw straight through him. And I will have to have this rant at some point. I need to get it out. People loved him. And I was like, no, I know things behind the scenes or blah.
Yeah.
But I trusted that intuition. I was like, it's just not for me. I'm not Team Joe Wicks. I'm not Team Steven Bartlett, if I can get his name right. That's how not. I don't even know your name, Stephen, anymore. But yeah, to follow that intuition. If they're not for you, you don't have to like them just because everybody else says he's amazing, and follow who you feel aligned with. That's how I take from it. Anything else you'd like to add to
that? No, because without going onto different tangents about what goes on behind the scenes to take these seemingly ordinary guys and turn them into some kind of god. But again, we'd be here for another week dissecting that.
Yeah, I might have to get you back. This is for Rants with Carly on YouTube. I do have a podcast as well, Laura. So actually, I'm going to open that as a formal invitation. If you'd like to come onto the podcast, maybe we choose something from today that we'd love to explore further. So I'll leave that with you.
Perfect.
What do you think? So maybe watching, I should say, on YouTube, listen out. Well, look at the show notes for the link for podcast. And Laura is going to be a guest soon. Did you say yes to that? I've just said that you are being.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I wrote a newsletter last week on LinkedIn about the Joe Wicks fiasco. So it's another topic very close to my heart.
Ooh, I think we might have a topic for the subject for the podcast, and it's something about probably the mask and what goes into the marketing to make these seemingly ordinary people into superstars. Sometimes it does work, but for people like myself and for you, Laura, and people that are watching this that are just not buying into that, let's blow that conversation up as well. Let's disrupt that one as well.
Amazing. Sign me up.
Right, I'll get you booked in, definitely. So listen out for that one. Thank you so much, Laura. That has been, I can't even describe that. That's been brilliant. We've just broken down so much there. And what I love about these conversations is it's easy just to say, oh, Steven Bartlett, grr. We don't like Steven Bartlett. But this is then opening up that conversation of like, well, why do we not like him? And what is it about that? So thank you. You've brought in some new thoughts for myself, even that I just thought I just didn't like him as a person. It's deeper. It's always deeper, isn't it?
Of course. Yeah. Totally.
Brill. Fab. Right. Well, I will speak to you very soon for the podcast, but I will say goodbye on Rants with Carly. Thank you so much for being a guest, and I'll see you very soon, Laura.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.